Hello everybody and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you are returning, thank you so much for being here. You know you all mean the world to me, so thank you. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that and be sure to hit that little bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Today is the Minis Challenge and I am super excited. This is a monthly challenge. This month is Valentine's Day and I cannot wait to share. So let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. So I have these cute little rolling pins I picked up at the Hobby Lobby and my chalk paints in white, it's Adirondack white, crimson, and vintage Victorian. So I am starting out with my white. I did the little handles on the first rolling pin and then I'm going to do the body, if you will, of the second one. Then on the second one I'm going to do the handles pink, and on the next one I will do the body pink. You see what I'm doing here, just kind of mixing it all up. And then I'll do the red on the handles and then on the body. So everything is color coordinated, but each one of these is a little bit different. And then I went into my Cricut design space and I went to find a font, and I'm going to be better about telling you guys what fonts I'm using as I do this here. But I finally settled on DTC Honeymoon, and I went ahead and typed up the words that I want to use for these little rolling pins. I'm going to be creating stencils with my vinyl. If you don't have a Cricut, not to fear, you can certainly use other stencils. You could trace things on that you print off of your printer. You could Mod Podge things on. You can decorate these however you choose. I just happen to have my little joy, so I was creating these little words to use on my little rolling pins, but really the sky is the limit. Just use your imagination. So I've got my Be Mine, my XOXO, and I Heart You. And once I had those all set, I went ahead and got them all situated on my mat. And then I went ahead and cut down my stencil vinyl to the size I needed using my little cutter tool here and making sure that I've got it to the right width. And I don't think I worried about the length until after I had it done. Maybe I did because I can't remember. Yeah, no, I trimmed it off there too. So I got that applied to my mat and I went ahead and ran it through my little machine to get my stencil all made. So once it had gone through the machine and it was all cut, I trimmed them, not trimmed them, but I cut my little words apart to have separate stencils. And then I went ahead and weeded each of them. So you can see I'm just taking away the actual letters for this project. So it's leaving the stencil vinyl, just the exterior. So I've got my little stencils. And then I will use my transfer tape to apply it to the little rolling pins. Just trying to get that lined up and smoothing it down as best I can. Now I was having trouble with getting all of the edges to adhere to the chalk paint. I don't know if it's because it was chalk paint, if it was because it was curved. I'm not really sure what was going on, but I did struggle with that a little bit. So I wanted to go in and seal my stencils with the same color that I was using on each of these rolling pins before I came in with the color that I wanted to use for the stencil. And the reason I do that, you can do that with Mod Podge as well. And I know people have asked me in the past why I do it this way instead of with Mod Podge. I find that with chalk paint, you can actually see the Mod Podge if you get any bleeding. Whereas if you use your base color paint, it's the same paint, so you don't see it as readily. It's the exact same finish and you don't have to worry about it. So once I had all of my stencils applied, I went ahead and pulled this off, and I had applied my paint a little too thick trying to seal it in the first time. So as I peeled my stencils away, it did end up taking up some of the paint with it. Not ideal, but I was able to go back in and touch it up a little bit here and there. So I just grabbed a really fine paintbrush and I touched it up. So here's another thought. If you don't have a vinyl cutter, you can just use a little paintbrush and paint your little words on here too. It does not need to be perfect. In fact, I have another project a little later in the video where I specifically am not perfect with lines that I paint on a little planter, so to speak. So you'll see that in a little bit. But I went ahead and got the rest of it all weeded out. I'm using my special little tweezers to help me with that because my paint was not completely dry at that point. Once it was dry, I came in with some of this ribbon. I had gotten this at Michael's on clearance in a pack, and it was, I think, 5 or 6 different ribbons that were all color coordinated, but all different, and I love them. And so this is a little pink buffalo check, and I was trying to figure out the best way to do my little bow, and I realized if I tried to do it that way, I was going to end up with 4 tails, and I don't want 4 tails for this particular project. So I ended up doing a little loop, tying a tie around the middle of that loop, and I left the rest of it long. I was going to trim it off once I decided how large I wanted my little loops. So there I'm trimming that off, and so now I've just basically got a loop of ribbon that I tied another piece of ribbon around the center of. So hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm just going to attach this to the side of my little rolling pin with some hot glue. So just gonna grab my glue gun, a little tiny dab of glue on the knot of the ribbon, and then I'm going to adhere it to my rolling pin and just fluffing up my ribbon a little bit the way I want it. So there's the first one, and then I did the same thing with the other 2. So same process, created a loop, tied another little piece around the middle of it, and then adhered it. And that third one, I just put the bow on the opposite end just to have a little bit of variety. And that's it. Let me know what you think. As I mentioned earlier, today is the Minis Challenge, and I love this challenge. There is a whole playlist full of inspiration. The link for that is in my description box. This is an open invite challenge. That means anybody can participate. If you'd like to join us next month, it'll be Friday, February 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. DIY number 2. This is the little planter box I referenced just a few minutes ago, and I had gotten this, actually my sister got this for me at Michael's. I don't know what the price was. I think it was maybe $1, maybe $2 at the most, but she had picked it up for me, and I am going to give the entire thing a good coat of chalk paint. This is my Adirondack White by Home Decor. It is a plaid product, and I have gotten it on Amazon. If you're interested in this or any of the other supplies that I use on a regular basis, you'll be able to find those in my Amazon store, which is linked in my description box as well. But I am just going to be painting a very rough stripe all around this planter. I left a little strip of white, and I'm coming in with my vintage Victorian pink, and I am painting that all along the perimeter, if you will. And then I'm going to come in with my red. This is crimson. These are the same colors I used before on my rolling pins, and I am just making really rough lines. It's basically making a striped little planter, and this was called a planter. I didn't make that up. That's what it said on it, so that's how I'm going to use it. So I've got my floral foam, and I cut a block of that down to size. I'm putting some hot glue, if I can get my gun working there, in the base and setting my foam down inside just to keep it from moving around. And then I have these little faux moss stones that I was going to put in there, and then I decided I wanted to put some other things in there before I set the stones in. So I grabbed some of my floral moss. This is from the Dollar Tree. So were those little stones. The little moss stones are also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just covering up my floral foam, kind of camouflaging that a little bit. And then I have one of my little styrofoam balls, also from the Dollar Tree, that I am putting on a little skewer stick. also from the Dollar Tree. I'm using one of my Arteza paint markers to paint that little dowel. I think it was called Khaki. It's just a light brown color. I added some hot glue into the hole I had created and then stuck that dowel back in there. So now I'm taking more of my moss and I'm just gonna kind of break it up a little bit, make sure that it's not real chunky, no huge pieces. I'm liberally applying hot glue to my styrofoam ball, and as you can see, I'm just rolling it in the moss, and I'm gonna get this completely covered with the moss. Then I'm going to take these little foam roses. Actually, I guess I'm going to measure that first. No, foam roses first. Okay, so taking these foam roses that I had left over from another project from last week's video, and I am going to just put a little teeny dab of glue on the back of each of these roses, and I am applying it to my little moss-covered foam ball. So I just kind of spread them out here and there sporadically. Now I'm going to measure my little dowel and or skewer, and I'm going to press it down into the foam core. And now I can add in my little stones. You can do as few or as many of these as you want. You could even not do any of these little stones, but I just thought that they were sweet and cute and gave it a little bit more interest. So I decided to put them in there. Now I have this little pick. I believe this was also from the Dollar Tree. I've had it in my stash for a while. It was really, I got it at like Christmas time, but like 2 years ago, Christmas time. And I just put a little dab of hot glue on the end of that so that I wouldn't lose one of those little balls off of the wire. Sometimes they slide around, and I'm just kind of twisting it to make a curlicue of sorts and tucking it down into the floral foam at the base of the little mini tree trunk, if you will. I just felt like it needed something extra, and I wanted to put something around that little trunk. You could also wrap little pip berries around it, something like that. I thought about doing that, and then I decided to go with this instead. And that's it. DIY number 3. All right, this is a little, what would you call this? Box? It's not really a box. My sweet subscriber Rose sent this to me in a huge stash of crafting supplies. That's the word I wanted. As you saw, I gave that a coat of the white Adirondack as well, and now I am using these little stickers from the Dollar Tree. These are wood stickers, and I'm painting the 3 natural tone ones red because they are all the same size. I needed 3 the same size, and I'm going to go ahead and create another stencil for myself. I didn't go through the motions on how I created this one, but I am just showing you that I used my Explore 3 for this one. Again, you could hand draw these. You could print something out on your word processor and trace it onto your project. You could Mod Podge things. You could use stickers. You don't have to have a vinyl cutter in order to do this. But I went ahead and got my vinyl tape out and got my stencil, that was the word I was looking for, all transferred over. I'm just lining it up onto my, what do you call these, you guys? It's not a frame, but anyway, I got that all transferred over, and once I had done that, it did, again, I was struggling a little tiny bit with getting it off. So I did set down a piece of the backing for my transfer tape. So if I had to lay it down again, it didn't go back and stick to my stencil again because I was struggling with that a little bit. But I finally got the job done. I put some parchment paper over top of it and burnished it again just to make sure that it was all really nicely on there. And then I went in with my white paint again to seal my stencil. Same reason that I'm not using the Mod Podge for this. I just don't like the effect that it gives when you get a little bit of leakage or seepage. This time I did a very thin coat, and I'm doing almost like with a dry I want to say brush. That's not a brush. It's a makeup sponge. I could just cut these makeup sponges down that I get from the Dollar Tree into little pieces, and I use them for my stencils. But I went in with a very dry sponge, and I gave it a couple of coats, and that worked amazing, and I had no issues at all. None. So it looked super pretty. And then I can go ahead and I can apply my little red heart stickers. Again, these are wood, and they just have little foam tape, double-sided tape on the back of them, so you can adhere them to your project. I love it. Let me know what you think. DIY number 4. Okay, this time I have a whole bunch of wooden beads from Amazon. I was also showing you some little heart keychains that my sister had picked up for me from Michael's again last year. I'm separating out, I've got 15 beads that I'm putting in each of these little sandwich bags. I saw somebody else do this a long time ago, and I cannot remember who it was. It might have been Wendy from White Sparrow Living. I'm not positive, but I thought it was a really great idea. So I'm just adding a little bit of paint to each of my bags. And again, these are the same colors that I've been using for all of the projects. So I'm keeping that same red, white, pink theme for my tier tray that we're going to be decorating later. But then I went ahead and I squished them all around and got everything coated for all 3 of these. Now, I highly recommend continuing as soon as you're done squishing them around. Unfortunately, I got a little interrupted and my paint started drying on them. So yeah, there was definitely some excess paint, so you can see me like running them around on my parchment paper trying to get some of the excess paint off. I finally got smart and got a paper towel and started rubbing each of them individually. But because I'd gotten interrupted, the paint was not as smooth on my beads as they will be on yours if you take my advice and don't let them dry out. So now I'm taking one of those heart keychains and I'm removing the keychain part from the heart. These are wooden, the hearts are, and I'm going to give this a coat of my Adirondack white chalk paint on both sides, and then I scuffed the edges to distress it a little bit just to make that a little bit rough. Now I've got my Arteza paint marker, in red. I'm trying to remember the name of this particular vermilion, something like that. But I am creating my little love word. This time, obviously, I am hand lettering this. I went back and made all the letters a little bit thicker. And then later on, I did go back in and add some white back to the center of that heart. I decided I didn't like it all filled in like that. So in my final reveal of this, you'll see that that actually has a white heart in the middle of it. Now I am taking some butcher's twine. This is from the Dollar Tree. This was a great find. There's a ton of it on this spool, and I was very excited to have found it. But threaded it onto a large needle. I think this is called an embroidery needle. And I threaded my little beads once they were all dry in a pattern, just red, pink, white, red, pink, white. And I just kept on going all the way to the end. And then I added on my little love heart. Looking at it now, I'm realizing that I did it the opposite of what I wanted to do because my heart was white, so I wanted to end with a red bead. So I literally did the opposite of what I meant to do. But oh well, I was probably thinking I was going to attach it to the other end when I started, but this is the way I did it. So I got that all tied off, and then I ran my needle back through the last 3 beads so that we can hide our thread or string or butcher's twine, whatever you want to call this. So I trimmed that off, and now it'll be hidden inside those beads. So I ran all of the beads back down the length so that everything was nice and snug. And then I decided I was going to make a tassel for the other end. If you are interested in seeing complete instructions on how I create my tassel, I will make sure that I link that video in my description box where I go through the step-by-step. but then I went ahead and I had not tied off the top of this tassel yet because I decided I wanted to use the string from the garland to do that. So I ended up looping that through there and tying it off that way. And then once I had it all knotted and secured, I did the same thing, running the twine back through those last 3 beads before trimming it off. Now I'm cutting all of my loops, and then I'll go ahead and I'll pull everything up together and I will trim it and give it just a little bit of a haircut so it's all nice and even. And that's it. That is it. Let me know what you think. And now it's time for a shout out timeout. Adorable Andrea, I love this little snowman wreath, so cute. And beautiful Deborah, this is stunning. Thank you so much for sharing. And so pretty Melissa, she's been working on her Etsy shop, Farmhouse Decor by Mel. I hope you'll check it out. And really nice Rose. I was so excited to see you made the lamp I made last year. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 5. All right, I've got this cute little glass bottle from the Dollar Tree. I have some red, what is that? Food coloring, yeah, and some water, also my joy. So I came in and I was looking for just a love something. So they've got a whole bunch of different options in here. Of course, in the end, I ended up going with that very first one. I was paused at the beginning there because I was looking at it and I really liked it, but then I wasn't ready to commit. So I went back through, but of course, that very first one I ended up going with. So I got that all sized the way that I wanted to. And then I got it all cut out. And once it was cut, I trimmed off the excess vinyl that I didn't need in case I needed a small piece later on. And I weeded all of my little letters. Got that all situated. I don't know if you all enjoy weeding if you do have a vinyl cutter. I find it relaxing. It's kind of fun, usually. Every once in a while it can be stressful if there's a piece that doesn't want to cooperate, but I actually find it fun. But I love these letters. I love this little font. It's so delicate and pretty. But I went ahead and burnished that and got that onto my transfer tape so that I could go ahead and get that onto my little glass jar, bottle. I'm not sure what you would want to call this. Got that all lined up and I pressed it right on. I did clean the glass with some rubbing alcohol before I went ahead and applied this, just so you know. It's best to make sure that it's nice and clean before you put your vinyl down. So there's my little jar. Now, again, you could decorate this with a lot of other things, but I went ahead and I filled it about halfway with water. I've got my food coloring. I am dropping in just 3 drops or so, added some more water, put in some more drops to get it to the color that I wanted it, a little bit more water, just so that it was above the top of the love so you can see the love against it. Such a simple, easy little project, you guys. Now I've got a little tag and one of my Dollar Tree markers. It's maybe a rose gold color, I would say. And I'm writing number 9. Leave me a comment if you know what this is, because my husband and my daughter didn't know what it was. I felt vindicated when my sister knew what it was, but leave me a comment and let me know if you know what I am making here, what this is supposed to be, okay? But I went ahead and I kind of looped the tag around my fingers because the string wasn't long enough to do it around the jar. So that was how I wanted to attach it at any rate. But I went ahead and used a little tiny dab of hot glue just to get the tag to sit where I wanted it. And that is it. I thought I was being very clever, but let me know if you know what this is. DIY number 6. Okay, I've got another one of these little box frame things from my sweet subscriber Rose. Again, I don't even know what to refer to this as. A little wooden bin? I don't know. But I cleaned it up with some rubbing alcohol again, and then I gave it a good coat of chalk paint. This time I decided that I really wanted to keep the wood color, wood effect, whatever you want to call it. I wanted the wood grain to still show on the sides of my, I'm going to call it a box for lack of a better term. So I was just very careful with the chalk paint and just made sure I went just the edge and preserved the edges. You can certainly tape that off if you feel the need to do that. Here I am back in the Cricut studio. This was like a Cricut day for me today. This is not sponsored by any means. I just really like my Joy. It makes things really easy. And I would have used the Joy for the other project too, but I needed a larger piece of vinyl, so I had to pull out the Explorer. But at any rate, I was looking for a February 14th or a 14, and then I ended up just going with what is that? A font instead. And you can see I had picked out a couple of different heart wreaths. That was what I looked for, something that could be cut as a heart wreath, and I hadn't decided which one I wanted to use. So I was just playing with it a lot. You'll see I went through a few different fonts before I settled on one. For me, a lot of this is trial and error. I am very visual, and so I like to try different things out. You can see Elfie, that was the one I finally settled on. And so I'm just lining it up and getting it positioned inside my wreath. And then I duplicated it and I went ahead and dropped it inside the other one so I could see which one I liked better. I liked the original one, so that was the way I went. So I went ahead and I grouped these together, and then I took a look at the layers because I wanted to make sure they were going to cut properly. I selected the two that I wanted to cut out in black, so you can see those are highlighted in green, and then I welded them. I clicked on weld under actions, and that told it that I wanted those to cut together. So now you can see they're here together on the black vinyl. And I'm going to go ahead and get those cut out on my little Joy. So I was telling it to connect and to cut, and it prepped it. So now it's cutting, went ahead and got that all taken care of. And then when it was done with that, it went and showed me that it was ready to cut the red. And so I did the same thing, let it know that I was ready to go, and it went ahead and cut my red. So once I had everything cut out, I went ahead and I trimmed off my extra vinyl, you know how I like to do that. And then I went ahead and weeded everything out. So here you can see this is all of the black vinyl that's coming away. And then with the red, I decided I wanted to cut out the middle of that little wreath because, again, I want to preserve the vinyl. You know, I can use some of these little pieces for other projects here and there where I only need small bits and pieces, right? And so I like to keep that stuff. So I had used my little X-OXO knife from Cricut to cut that out. So now I just weeded it the rest of the way, got my transfer tape out. I love the lines on the transfer tape because they help you line everything up and get it even. And then I just kind of taped down the edges of this other vinyl, just the backing, so that it wasn't popping up on me when I went to try to add the second one down. So I'm going to come on in, get everything lined up. I did not use registration marks for this. So I'm just eyeballing it and making sure that I've got it the way that I think it needs to be. Coming in, I'm trying to burnish just the red because I don't want to have to remove again the black, if that makes sense. So lining everything up and getting it centered on here as best as I can, using those lines to help guide me as well, because I know that I have my 14 lined up on there. So burnished it, and then I just peeled everything away. I did end up taking a little bit of my chalk paint off there because I probably should have let it dry a little bit longer than I did, but I was able to go back in with a little bit extra paint and fix that in a second, you'll see. So I just burnished it really well again with the backing from my transfer sheet, and I touched it up with some white paint, and it was good as new. But let me know what you think of this one. And here we are with the final reveal. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Thank you again so much for watching. If you have not already subscribed, I hope that you'll consider doing that, and be sure to hit that little bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Please leave me a comment. It really does help my video to get noticed and for me to grow my channel. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Oh, and remember to check out the playlist in my description box. Thanks so much for watching. Take good care. Bye. Can you sit? Sit. Can you sit? I can't do this with you standing on me. Sit. Look, you look so handsome in your sweater. You want to show everybody how handsome you are? Okay, here we go. You ready?